Now, earlier today, President Trump made an interesting admission that lit social media on fire. Now, this came after the president was complaining about former special counsel Robert Mueller's remarks yesterday in a press conference. On Twitter, Trump responded by admitting that he did get a little bit of help from Russia. Interesting. He said, Russia, 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 that's all you heard at the beginning of this witch hunt hoax. And now Russia has disappeared because I had nothing to do with Russia helping me get elected. It was a crime that didn't exist. Oops. Oh, now wait a minute. Okay, before we get to the responses, I need to clarify some things. Because, for one, did Russia try to interfere in our elections? Yeah. Yeah, we know that already, with bots and trolls. Of course. We know that. We also know it didn't really have a huge impact. And that, of course, gets to, did it really move the needle for President Trump? I actually do think it had a minimal impact, and there's no way that we can really kind of tell or know how much of an impact those bots and trolls really had. But I guess what it tried to do is to amplify the right-wing smear machine against Hillary Clinton that was already there. In fact, I think that was one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate. She had a ton of baggage, some of it earned, I think a lot of it earned, but some of it not earned during her time. There was an element of sexism, of course, but she was also running as the face of zero change. She was the embodiment of the establishment and basically a status quo candidate, right? Now, I think some of the bots and trolls personally impersonated Bernie Sanders supporters. Now, that inadvertently helped the establishment come up with a narrative that it was Bernie Sanders that lost Clinton the election. Now, oh, the Bernie Sanders, the Bernie bros are so terrible. Yeah, how many of those could have been imposters? People, that were impersonating actual Bernie Sanders supporters and trying to be as toxic as possible to really justify that whole Bernie bro narrative. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Some of the Facebook groups have been taken over by people, who were not who they say they were. And it could have been taken over by some of these bots and troll farms. Now, that said, her campaign, died a death of 1,000 cuts. Even though Bernie Sanders ran all over the country for her spreading the message that it was very, very important. It was the most important thing to defeat Donald Trump. He was out there campaigning his ass off. You cannot say that Bernie Sanders did not work hard enough to try to get Hillary Clinton elected and have, me not laugh in your face. Because it's completely absurd when they say, oh, he didn't work hard enough for her. He didn't do enough for her. And he's the reason that she lost. No. She is the reason that she lost. Again, it is her campaign died the death of 1,000 cuts. And look, you had a perfect storm of factors that came together to basically lead her into being beaten by an idiot reality TV show host. And so, and look, again, you could say, well, she won by 3 million votes. That's true. But she didn't win the Electoral College. Are you going to do anything about the Electoral College? I would love to see Democrats come out and say, okay, let's get rid of the Electoral College then. Because it turns out that we've had a lot of Republicans, extremely unpopular Republicans, win by the Electoral College and not through the popular vote. But anyway, that said, Donald Trump going out there admitting that Russia did him a solid is kind of hilarious. I bet this is one of the reasons why Don McGahn didn't want Trump talking to Mueller, because he would say these things accidentally and perjure himself constantly. Like, no, do not let him talk to Mueller. Don't let him talk to Mueller. He's going to mess it up. And so, for some reason, he was able to get away with that. Now, and you can see why, right? Later on, he said this, quote, Russia did not help me get elected. You know who got me elected? I got me elected. Russia didn't help me at all. Russia, if anything, helped the other side. Wait a minute. Now that's classic projection because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If Russia had helped the other side, Don't you think they would have actually maybe have won? Doesn't make any sense. But that first statement, of course, led to some fun interactions on social media, starting with Tim O'Brien, who said this: I think this is the first time that President Trump has said that Russia helped him get elected. And again, the reason that he said that, or that he normally doesn't say that, is because of his ego. Oh, no, I did it all by myself. Nobody helped me. I'm just so great. I'm just so fantastic that no other external factors had helped me. It's just because I was so awesome that I ended up winning. Again, that's Trump's ego, right? Now, Molly Jung Fast says, I'm starting to suspect that the president may have gotten some help from Russia. Just a tiny bit. Unstable Genius says, Freudian slip. George Conway, that is the husband of White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, which is interesting, says, so here you finally admit that Russia helped me get elected? Well, that's what the investigation was about. Technically, the investigation wasn't quite about that, even though that was one of the major findings of Robert Mueller. No, it was about whether or not Donald Trump had actively participated in a criminal conspiracy to get Russian help to win the election. And again, there was insufficient evidence of that specifically. But the investigation did find plenty of evidence that Russia did interfere in this election. And so Conway says, it thus wasn't a witch hunt or a hoax. So why did you repeatedly try to obstruct it? And that, of course, is a really good question. And that's important because, again, that part is what Mueller tends to gloss over. People that watched the Mueller press conference had glossed over. He made sure to remind people that they did try to interfere in the election by swaying public opinion. Now, again, I want to point out, and this is very important, in the context, Hillary Clinton spent way more than the Russians on ads, Facebook ads, TV ads, etc. And Donald Trump himself, thanks to the mainstream media, actually got $2 billion worth of free media. So when it comes to influence, again, I'm just pointing out the facts here. When you look at the money spent and you look at how much television, how much money was spent on television ads between the two camps and the free advertising between the two camps, Russian interference barely had an impact. I wouldn't be surprised if it was hardly imperceptible, right? They didn't change vote totals. They didn't do anything like that, but they did interfere in a very small way. And that does show how our system is vulnerable. And maybe we should actually work to change that. I mean, that would be the smart thing to do, right? That said, let's go to more tweets here. Dina Obadala says, this is the moment in old-time TV detective shows where the suspect accidentally admits he committed the crime. That's fun. Fred Gutenberg says, quote, wait, finally acknowledging that Russia did play a role in the election. This is news. Let's assume we do not care if you had anything to do with it. Seems you did, he says. What are you doing to stop the next intrusion? Now, look, let me dissect that for a second. Now, the answer, of course, to that last question is, well, they're not doing anything. They don't care at all. I maintain that Trump was too stupid and too egotistical to take any sort of help, even though it was definitely offered. As for the intrusion part of that, the Republicans continue to block electoral integrity measures that get passed through Congress. Republicans continue to block it over and over and over again. Now, to be fair, on the other side, Democrats have not addressed the Electoral College. So, again, everything is basically the same as it was before. Now, to remind you, Clinton would probably be president if it weren't for the Electoral College. And not only that, but maybe we could have avoided the debacle that was at Iraq and Afghanistan had Al Gore won the election in 2000, which actually he did win the election in 2000, but Bush was again chosen by the Electoral College, and not only that, but of course by the Supreme Court in Florida. The Supreme Court, and also by Florida. Now, think about that, right? Just think of the stuff that we could have avoided had we actually had Gore as president and not George W. Bush. Anyway, again, let's move on to more tweets here. Anonymous White House official said, you should probably have someone check your tweets before you post them. Not just for spelling. Otherwise, you run the risk of admitting that, say, He only won a presidential election due to the help of a foreign adversary who has no good intentions for our country. I would argue that yes, other countries generally don't have good intentions for our country. They have good intentions for their own country. And so, what do? If you're a foreign country and you want to maybe expand your sphere of influence or whatever, well, that would involve decreasing America's sphere of influence, kind of destroying our foreign policy, which, let's be honest, our foreign policy is already terrible. And I would actually like to see our current foreign policy destroyed. I would like to see our regime change wars ended. I would like to see our foreign policy change to something, instead of spreading democracy, actually just being peaceful and keeping to ourselves. Except for actual humanitarian aid and not bombing anyone. That said, I don't think Russia has our best interests at heart. And so it's kind of natural for them to support someone who is a bumbling moron. Let's be fair about that. All right. And look, again, it's hard to say how much impact trolls and memes had on our election. But as far as a spell check is concerned, Trump's on an iPhone. I have an iPhone. They have a spell check. Maybe he should use it. I'm just saying, it might make you look a little less ridiculous. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.